I am with Lori Bowling in Ashland, Kentucky.
Yes.
At the Boyd County Cooperative Extension Service, and we're going to go inside and find out about all the opportunities that they offer to the citizens of Boyd County. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
My name is Lori Bowling, and I am the horticulture agent for the University of Kentucky in Boyd County, here in what we call Ashland, Kentucky, our little town here. The Cooperative Extension Service is a national program that is in every state of the U.S. as well as Puerto Rico. It is a program that helps to serve the farmers, the 4-H kids. We do all kinds of programming in those areas of agriculture and family and consumer sciences to help develop better citizens in our communities. In this little area that I'm in, and I say little because we are in one of the smaller counties in Kentucky, I have noticed our county has gone from a more rural setting to a very urban setting. And so we do not have really very many, if any, full-time farmers in our area. We have possibly 1 to 2, but most of our farmers actually do have an outside job. They work at one of our refineries or our mills or places like that. They have to work there to help supplement that farming. But I deal more with gardening, and what I have noticed, we have gone from gardening to feed large families to these niche gardens where people are in town and they have started to go back to that local food movement. And they want locally grown produce, and some of them have started growing it in their backyards. I've seen corn in landscapes right in with their shrubs. People have planted corn and tomatoes, beans, lots of container gardening. We have a large population of elderly, and so they have to have some modifications made. They still like their homegrown tomatoes and their beans, so they are growing more in containers.
Tell me about your soil. Can you make a general statement about the soil in your county?
As far as the soil in our county, when I go out and have taken soil samples, or I have soil samples actually brought into this office, I see everything from what we call a clay loam to a very sandy loam. And it just depends on where you're at in the county. We are up against the Ohio River, so there are some sandy areas in this county. Probably the majority is a clay loam, meaning we do have the gray clay or the hard pan type clay. So a lot of people have to really mix organic matter and compost into their soil to get a good garden. That is one of the services that we here in Kentucky offer, and I'm assuming that most extension offices across the nation or the U.S. would offer some kind of soil sampling service. But in Boyd County, we offer 125 free samples every year to Boyd County residents and homeowners and farmers. Those are sponsored by a grant from our Kentucky Farm Bureau and our Soil Conservation Office. And then after that, we only charge $6. And that $6 for that soil sample could really save a person a lot of money. Because a lot of people I have found put lime on their gardens without knowing what the pH is. I have had farmers that have put lime every year down. I finally convinced them to bring me a soil sample, and I tell them that they do not need lime. Their pH is messed up. This is why their gardens are starting to produce poorly and why they're not having good success.
What would you say is the biggest problem in your area in terms of invasives or, killing trees?
Yes, invasives, we have the kudzu vine. It is pretty bad. We also have another one that is just as bad in our little area as the kudzu, is actually Japanese knotweed. Those two are very severely invasive in this area, and we have places where kudzu has grown over houses. And if you are familiar with kudzu, you know that it grows very rapidly in the summertime, in the heat. It loves it, and it can grow up to 1 foot a day.
What do you do about it?
So for those invasives, there is really not a knockdown for those as far as let's do this and it'll get rid of it. What we recommend is to use an all-kill spray such as a glyphosate product, which I know a lot of people cringe, and I'm very hesitant and very reserved in recommending chemicals. What I usually tell people is if you would like to use an herbicide in order to keep those weeds down, you would want to use the glyphosate, repeated applications. If you choose not to use the herbicide, then you have to just keep it mowed back, and continually keeping it mowed back, the less production it has, the less food production it will have, but it will not completely kill it all back. And what you're doing is you're just keeping it at bay.
You can't pull it out by the roots and get rid of it?
If it's just starting a little bit up one tree, you can pull it out, but you have to keep watching because any piece of the root left will grow again. And if you catch it early enough, then that's great. But here's the issue I run into. Clientele call me and they have the problem with the kudzu, and the first thing I ask them is, do you have any neighbors close to you? And inevitably they will say yes, and I ask, do they have the kudzu on their property as well? Well, yes, they do. Well, then what you do is going to be futile if they do not do something as well. Then you're just going to keep putting a Band-Aid on that problem.
Does it actually kill the tree underneath it? Because I know it completely covers a tree.
What it does is it strangles, what we would call strangling the tree. It covers that canopy, and what happens is when it covers the canopy, the tree is not able to absorb sunlight to manufacture its food, so then it just actually can kill the tree. English ivy can do the same. And I have seen landscapes with English ivy growing up trees, and the roots of it will actually get into the bark of the tree, and it will grow up and do the same thing. The first thing on combating of any kind of weed is to get a proper identification, and then you know where to go from there.
But what are some of the things people walk in here with? Do they walk in with bugs to identify?
They walk in with bugs, they walk in with snakes, they walk in with plants, they walk in with everything, seems like. You know, I have a few here. I have a brown recluse spider. This was actually caught on a sticky trap in a person's basement. Brown recluse can be very deadly to some people. They can cause a lot of damage if you get a bite from one of those. And they had some children in the home, so I had to identify this for them to let them know, yes, you do have brown recluse. The one way that you can tell that this is a brown recluse, the identifying feature, is the fact that it only has 4 eyes, and then right here is that fiddle-shaped design. That is the classic tail right there. The entomologists look also at the number of eyes. Most spiders will have 6 eyes. This one only has 4. I worked with them to tell them some things that our entomologists recommended for them to try. If it's really bad, I usually recommend they go with an exterminator. You know, you want to make sure you get that taken care of. You're talking about your family's, livelihood or health. I have an emerald ash borer, and this is the insect that has destroyed the ash trees over here in the eastern side of the U.S. and has caused severe damage to the green ash. Here in Ashland, we had a lot of those trees planted because they used to be recommended for street trees, for urbanization, landscaping. And this little insect has really caused a huge effect on that population of trees here.
Is there any connection between the name of your town, Ashland, and the ash tree, or does the ash come from coal?
I'm not really sure exactly where the ash comes from. I actually haven't done the history on where I live.
Tell me about that unusual stick laying on your desk.
Well, these are branches from a tree that a gentleman brought into me. He called me on the phone and he started to explain what was going on his willow tree. He had branches that were curling that didn't look right, and I thought I knew what was going on, but I asked him if he would care to bring me a few branches to let me see. So he did. He came in. So this is actually caused from a virus, and it's fasciation is the name of the condition. This is not desirable in a landscape setting on a willow tree that's supposed to look like a willow tree. Weeping willow, yes. But these are used sometimes in floral design. And so a lot of floral designers use these to put, characteristic features into their designs. And I asked him if I could keep the branches just to show my master gardeners, and when I'm teaching and talking about different conditions that plants will come up with that look very strange.
But does this kill the tree?
Oh, no, this does not kill the tree. It just causes it to be deformed, and not all of the tree will be deformed, only the branches that are affected by it.
Tell me about that mallet you've got over there. It looks like you're a judge.
Oh, well, I was the state president for the Kentucky Agriculture County Extension Agent Association. And I was the president 4 years ago. And when I was elected president, my father made me this mallet so that I would have a mallet or my gavel for my meetings when I conducted the meetings. He was very excited that I became president. I was only the second female president of that organization.
People who are farming, do they have a particular pest that's really a problem?
Not so much an insect pest. We suffer a lot with diseases here in our area. We are a hotbed for fungal diseases because of we kind of sit in a valley area, but the humidity, it really causes havoc on all of our plants. The tomatoes, we get early blight, we get lots of different fungal spores in here and diseases and downy mildew, powdery mildew, and we're all the time combating those.
It freezes here, so does everybody get a second chance the next year?
Not necessarily. We don't have very good freezes anymore. We used to have really good freezes back through the 90s. Since we've turned into the 2000s, our winters have been kind of mild. I mean, we have very few snow events. We did have a polar vortex a couple of years ago where we were in the deep freeze for maybe a week. I didn't really see a big change though in our populations of our insects or any of our disease spores. Some of those critters really have good overwintering bodies and they know how to beat the weather. We have great researchers and specialists at the university that are all the time doing research projects and things to come up with different ideas. Some things, Fusarium and Verticillium wilt, those are soil-borne. So sometimes, we preach crop rotation. Don't grow tomatoes in the same place you did the last 2 years. Move those around. Don't grow anything in that plant family. Move those around. We preach using mulches, whether it be straw, whether it be plastic mulch, anything like that to keep any splashing from rainwater from the soil up on those lower leaves of plants. I could go on and on about some of the things that they're trying and they're doing to help without using insecticides. That is one of the goals of my job. I have to do a plan of work every 4 years. In that plan of work, I have outlined that my goal in that 4 years is to try to get educational programs out there to teach people how to use less chemicals, less harm to the environment. It's not just going and talking how you can do this instead of using this chemical. It's talking and teaching a whole practice of gardening, not just get rid of this and use this. So you have to talk about the whole cycle of gardening. Used to, in Kentucky, you could not be the extension agent in the county that you graduated high school from. And it had to do with the fact that we received local tax money, and it was, it's political and things like that. But they took away that stipulation right before I became an agent. So I was able to become an agent in my home county. This is where I was born and raised. I'm serving the people of my county. And I consider all those people my friends and family. My husband and I both were born and raised here. We raised our children here. Now they're raising their families here. We've traveled, we've seen part of the U.S., but this is home. And I want my home to be the best it can be.
You must have seen a huge change in the economics from the coal industry.
Yes.
Do you see any bright spots on the horizon?
Well, let me just tell you, we lost a huge employer for the most part here in our area, and that was AK Steel. It's a steel mill that had been around. That was where my father retired from, and it has been closed pretty much. The coal industry, the filtering to that for us, we have no coal mines here in Boyd County. However, there's power plants, coal-fired power plants. One of the biggest ones just south of us in the neighboring county was closed. That eliminated a lot of jobs, and we have seen some very hard times here in our community. And about 4 years ago, that's when I really noticed the spike in more phone calls of people wanting to start gardening. They wanted to start raising their own food. They wanted to sell at our farmers market. They were looking at that as a supplemental income to whatever their severance was from where they got laid off. Things have picked up a little. We do have a new industry coming into our area now, which hopefully will help add jobs. We've got in a downturn, so we're hoping we'll start back up in an upturn.
Right.
And my hope is that if we do start back up in an upturn, that the people of Boyd County won't forget how hard times we had it. So if somebody neighboring around us goes through this, then we'll be able to help them out. As far as really getting things going, we do have several churches that have started food pantries. We have more food pantries around here now than I have ever seen in my life. I go to a little country church. They do a food pantry, and we get 80 people to 120 people there once a month, and it's just phenomenal. 80 to 100 families is what you're looking at there, and that's just a little tiny country church serving that many people. So we have the blessing box movement now. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but You can drive around the town of Ashland, and anywhere there's a church, if you look very far from that church, you'll see a little cabinet setting just by itself, and it'll have a sign, blessing box. There'll be food items. Some people will put clothing items in there. Our homeless can go by and take out, they put food items homeless can eat. I do the Master Gardener program at our federal prison here in this county. Those gentlemen that go through my class, the way they do their volunteer time is they work in a garden that they have there at the facility, and they raise 75,000 pounds of produce usually on an average annually. All of that produce is donated to our local food bank that distributes to 28 different organizations in this tri-state area with Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky.
So you're talking about fresh food at a food bank.
And within 24 hours from the time it's picked, it's distributed. They do garden 3 seasons, spring, summer, and fall. The winter garden, we usually don't have a whole lot. That's when we do the class. We start the class the end of January. Mm-hmm. And they are starting to start seeds in the greenhouse over there. They start their tomato seeds and their pepper seeds that I work with the food bank to determine what they need. What did you see your clientele take? One year we raised a bunch of Swiss chard and it got taken to a farm, a hog farm or something. No one knew what to do with it. No one would take it. They didn't know what it was. So we have to make sure that what we grow will be used. We don't want to grow produce that we have to just throw out. And we go through that. I order the seed. I take it out there. The inmates start the seed, or they, direct sow into the garden, and then we start the gardening process again. And we do that every year.
They actually walk out of prison with the knowledge of how to do something.
They walk out of prison actually with a certification from the University of Kentucky that they are an Extension Master Gardener. And that is why that program has been so successful. And I have 25 students every year with a waiting list at that program, because they get a certificate that they can take with them when they leave the facility to try to get gainful employment, to not be a repeat offender.
This is real community activism here that you're doing.
Well, I just think of it as doing my job. My father was a steel mill worker. My father-in-law was a truck driver for Ashland Oil. My husband is a mechanic. However, they all farmed. They all raised gardens. My dad raised cattle, a few cattle. He helped his dad. My grandfather had a 75-acre farm, and my dad has that now. He doesn't farm it, but he and I have gardened there before.
And your grandfather, did he farm full-time?
Yeah, he actually was a postal carrier part-time and farmed the rest of the time.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so very interesting, and I'm so excited about what all the opportunities there are in Ashland to get involved in this.
I'm so glad you came to visit us and get the word out that, we're doing awesome over here in Kentucky. These are seed packets that were donated to us from a local farm store, and we have been distributing them throughout our tri-state area to farmers and gardeners alike, to anyone that wants to garden. Kids programs, we've tried to get the word out, and we're going to be passing some out later this weekend to people that come on our garden tour. That is a picture of the Casey Harden Family Greenhouse north of here in Greenup County that has been owned and operated for the past 100 years by the same family, which is very unusual, especially in this area for the greenhouse operation. We are 3 miles from the epicenter of the opioid problem here in the U.S. Just across the river in West Virginia is pretty much the center of that issue. I have worked with some rehab places, working with individuals that are going through substance abuse, and I teach them gardening skills, and I try to teach them how to use gardening as a way to keep their hands occupied, to keep their mind occupied. And I just recently had a gentleman that got his 1-year coin for AA, and he was so proud of that, and he brought it to me and he said, I got my 1-year coin and it's because of this program. And I gave him a spot here on the back side of our building to raise his hot peppers. And I asked him if that garden spot was one of the things that attributed to him getting that 1-year coin, to be successful to achieve that. And he said, absolutely. He said, if I did not have that garden, he said, I might have fallen. And so just one person's life maybe got changed by this program. And that is why Extension is so important. Who's going to grow our food for us in the future? We have to have gardeners. We have to have farmers. Extension helps to train those people. We are part of that educational resource. And if the funding were to ever get cut, then, where would that information come from? We can Google and find anything on the web, but is what you're finding scientifically research-based information? That's what Extension has to offer. That we have tried it, we have proven or disproven that it works. This is where we need to go from now. Extension needs to be able to keep educating people, to keep teaching people how to grow this, how to raise this. What do we do with it when we harvest it? We need to be able to preserve it. We need to be able, we need those skills. We get federal, state, and local funding. We have local tax dollars. Most of us have local tax dollars. Everyone gets state funding and then federal funding. The federal funding is through the USDA, through the Farm Bill. I hope that those in our state and local governments across the U.S. realize how important a role Extension plays in the food for tomorrow's population. Let's go out and look at the raised bed garden we have out in front of our Extension office. We have a greenhouse, we have 10 raised beds, and we plant those and allow the community to come and harvest out of those if they would like. We harvest a lot here at our office. If we're having a luncheon, we may go out and grab a few tomatoes and a cucumber, but we'll go out and look at those beds and see what all we got out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori. That was so educational.
It was great for you to visit. I love talking about the Extension Service.
And I want to come back and see them again when they have even more exciting things happening.
And we would love to have you back.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that's impressive.
Yeah.
It's been a busy little bit.
Uh-huh.